Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. And on this day, Governor Bob Ferguson signed Senate Bill 5947 into law, a highly contentious sheriff decertification bill. We've spent a lot of time focusing on that one during this session. Waited until the last day to sign. He finished up. There are no more bills from the 2026 legislative session to sign. It's a done deal. Today, he also signed the capital budget and the operating budget, and he vetoed a $500,000 in spending for organized retail crime. And that has not gone over well with a member of his own party, Representative Mari Levitt, a moderate Democrat who posted about this on X today and is urging people to continue to reach out to the governor, even now that he, did this section veto. She's very, very displeased. We'll share some of what she has to say in today's episode. And the governor was asked by reporters about the income tax bill and the referendum, which was slapped down on Tuesday by Secretary of State Steve Hobbs. But Brian Haywood in Let's Go Washington may ask the state Supreme Court to weigh in now that Secretary of State has basically said you can't run a referendum, dummy. You knew this. I added the dummy part. We'll have an update as well on the constitutional challenge brought by Citizen Action Defense Fund, their executive director, Jackson Maynard, and they have retained former AG Rob McKenna for that fight. And we'll share a little bit more about thoughts on some of the real losers with the income tax bill, besides, of course, the millionaires in all of this. So here we go. It is April the 1st. No April Fools. This was the last day for bills being signed into law by Governor Bob Ferguson. He signed the capital budget. He signed the operating budget with a big chunk of spending for new affordable housing. There was much ado made about that. State subsidized housing, that is. But he vetoed a section for funding a crackdown on organized retail crime. If you've left your house, unless you order groceries that come to your front door, you no doubt have, seen the organized shoplifting effort that's going on. A lot of it is fueled by the drug crisis here, and you get folks that are, paid to go in and steal off high value items. A lot of them now behind lock cages in our stores. Can't even, buy cold medicine or baby formula without having to get that from a locked cage. And that's because these retailers have been really decimated by these organized retail operations. But this veto kind of came as a last surprise. And from what Representative Mari Levitt posted on X, she kind of just found out about this, I guess, yesterday and was urging the governor not to do it. Here's part of what she posted. She said, thank you to a broad coalition of partners who've heard the alarm in action by sending a letter to the governor to preserve the ORC, that's organized retail crime funding. This list includes Washington Hospitality, Retail, Tacoma Pierce County Chamber, Washington Build Black Alliance, and a series of others. She said the governor is heard if he vetoes after knowing the concerns in advance. Then that's on the governor, and his office will own it. Now, as I mentioned, she's more of a moderate Democrat, often is one of just a handful of Democrats to split off from their own party on some of these issues. So, making no secret of how displeased she is, we have every intention of following up with her in the days to come, as well as some of these organizations who are going, wait a minute, we got to do something. And after today's bill signing, Governor Ferguson was asked about the veto. He started by saying that, as AG, I was the one that created the organized retail crime task force, and we've done more. We would put more resources into this, and more cases and charges are getting brought against organized retail crime players because of what I've done. But then he finished by saying, we had to balance the budget, and this is just one of those things that had to go. And so that's the breaks, basically, is what he had to say. So, again, we're going to be following up on that in the days to come. The first bill that he signed today, though, was Senate Bill 5974. This is the bill that will require county sheriffs and police chiefs to meet new eligibility requirements, which include having at least 5 years of full-time law enforcement experience and not having done or said anything that could get state certification revoked by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. And the commission can revoke basically for misconduct, leading to elective sheriffs to be removed from office. And there is, according to opponents, way too much wiggle room in here to give the Criminal Justice Training Commission, all appointed members, not elected members, many of them appointed directly by the governor, give them power, wide power, to decertify a sheriff, say they don't like that sheriff's politics. And that could be the motivation for this. Um, there may well be some legal challenges coming. Now, lawmakers did end up amending that bill right before final passage to say that the 5 years of law enforcement experience provision doesn't apply to current sheriffs. That allowed a carve out for Pierce County Sheriff Daniel Garcia, who would not have, be able to keep his seat because of not having enough prior law enforcement experience. And it also created a carve out for King County Sheriff Patty Cole Tyndall. She would have been decertified, but for an amendment to exempt her from the bill's required 5 years of consecutive commissioned law enforcement service. Now, a group of sheriffs had asked the governor to make some significant changes to the bill. And during the signing today, the governor said, I'm not going to veto anything here in this bill, which is what the sheriffs wanted him to do, but I do have some concerns and there'll be some work to do on this in the interim, although he did not get into specifics. Here's Governor Ferguson on Senate Bill 5974, just ahead of signing that legislation today.
Sheriffs and police chiefs should be held to the same standards as their own officers and deputies. They should be certified and have law enforcement experience, pass a background check, and have a clean criminal history. Senate Bill 5974 modernizes Washington law governing sheriffs, police chiefs, and town marshals by setting these minimum qualifications. The Tri-City Herald editorial board said law enforcement officers up and down the ranks must have the public's trust to do their job. Senate Bill 5974 will bolster that trust, and I agree with that. Under this bill, sheriffs and police chiefs who are decertified are removed from office. I do have some reservations about the process for creating a vacancy. I've had good conversations with the sponsor and other legislators as well about that, and we'll probably be doing a little work on the interim, but the main message today is this is a great bill.
Now, after the bill signings were complete, the governor did come over to a few of us reporters who were there in the room. And the first reporter, pressed him for some specifics on what kind of reservations you're having about the legislation. And he said it was really about the process for creating a vacancy, as you saw in that clip from the governor. But he didn't get into specifics. So, does he have a problem with, the Criminal Justice Training Commission having that much power? Does he have a problem with once they've, decertified somebody from office, are they going to be the ones to appoint somebody new, or do voters then get to elect a new sheriff? There's a lot of questions here. No specifics from the governor, though he was pressed by one reporter 3 separate times on this today. And he just said, it's something we're going to be working on. Now, we've spoken a couple of times with Mason County Sheriff Ryan Sperling. He was one of the sheriffs that signed on to that letter asking the governor to veto certain sections.
It seems like it's more along the lines right now. Some of that impetus is they want to control what sheriffs say. And this is one of those wrestling match, because I hear politicians say things that aren't necessarily true all the time, yet they're not necessarily held accountable. But sheriffs are in a different category according to a lot of people. So that's one of those things that they're wrestling through. Should sheriffs be political? Should we be able to say, or should it be controlled? And this bill effectively will mute sheriffs because of the threat of being decertified and removed by the way the RCW is written in the decertification portion, not necessarily in this bill, but in the decertification.
Again, no section veto on the bill. It was signed in its entirety, although the governor said he's got some reservations and we'll have to work with stakeholders in the interim, but it's a done deal at this point. Well, there may also be some legal challenges coming. And there is a gentleman running for sheriff in Kitsap County who at this point wouldn't be able to run, even though he has many, many years of decorated military service and is currently a King County sheriff's deputy. He doesn't have enough under this bill to qualify to even run, even though he's got his name out there and he's been campaigning. And he told me recently, I'm keeping my campaign going. I'm hoping that, somebody's going to step up with a legal challenge and that, I can hopefully still get elected and serve as the elected sheriff in Kitsap County. So this is far from a done deal on this. Now, as you likely know, back on Monday, Governor Ferguson signed Senate Bill 6346, the income tax. He signed that into law. Same day, a referendum was filed by Let's Go Washington and founder Brian Haywood. Now, less than 24 hours later, yesterday, the Secretary of State and Secretary of State Steve Hobbs came forward and said, I'm not going to process this referendum. Here's what he said in part, and we received an email. The proposed referendum submitted by Haywood sought to refer the bill in its entirety. However, Section 1208 of the bill declares that the tax imposed in this act is necessary for the support of the state government and its existing public institutions. He said basically, that's why the act is exempt from referendum. And he said, as a ministerial officer, I'm unable to accept Let's Go Washington's referenda for filing and will not process it further. So disappointing, but not surprising, according to Haywood and Let's Go Washington. In fact, I had spoken to him earlier the day, yesterday, before they got this news from Hobbs' office. And he said, if we can't do the referendum, we're going to go straight to the state Supreme Court because they believe that, this is something that needs to be settled there. Now, Governor Ferguson, after today's bill signing, was asked about challenges to the income tax that are coming. And this is what he said. It's a little bit hard to hear because he was kind of off microphone, but hopefully you can capture what he had to say.
They'll have their day in court. And that's as it should be. They'll have their day before the people. Totally appropriate. I'm very supportive of the initiative process, and I think that people should weigh in on this. The Supreme Court should weigh in on this. So I've got zero issue on that, and I feel confident going forward.
Now, Haywood with Let's Go Washington has already told the Center Square, again, they will ask the state Supreme Court to get involved because they believe the state constitution is clear that to make a bill, for lawmakers to make a bill that is referendum proof, it has to be a real financial emergency and necessary for the budget, not one or the other, but both. So lawmakers seem to think it only has to be one or the other. The governor seems to think it has to be one or the other. Ultimately, I guess the state Supreme Court will decide. But Haywood told me that, the real losers in this, everybody talks about, tax the rich. And it is going to be a tax on anyone who makes income above $1 million. You'll be taxed at nearly 10% of your income in excess of $1 million, or your combined household income in excess of $1 million. But the pass-through businesses, according to Haywood, where that money is moving through, but it's considered the business owner's personal income for that year, that those people are going to be the ones that really take a hit and really could lead to business flight in the state of Washington.
The messaging on the income tax is they want to paint it as a bunch of dudes in yachts, right? That's who it's aimed at. But really, that's not who's going to get hit by this, because I don't have a yacht. They may try to paint me as one. I don't own a boat. I think that's a stupid investment anyway. But the people that have money are doing what they can to get to make themselves safe from the clutches of the state. The people that are going to get hit are going to be the small businesses that run a pass-through operation. I've talked with several people from the Yakima area, where you've got a lot of like Hispanic-owned farms now, right? And the family's been busting their hump to make this something valuable and meaningful, and they run it as a pass-through, and now that's going to hit them, right? And I'm just watching. These guys are going to get hit, and I don't think the bill was written very well. I think it's sort of confusing, so not everybody even can tell. Does this hit me? What exactly does this? Where's the level? What's excluded? What's not excluded?
Mhm. Now, as to the legal challenge that we reported on Monday being brought by Citizen Action Defense Fund and former Attorney General Rob McKenna, nothing has yet been filed. I'm told today they're still kind of working with a couple of the potential plaintiffs in the case, and that's coming together, and that's going to then ultimately determine the venue for where they file, which court they file in. If they end up with, plaintiffs in Eastern Washington, maybe there's a court there that would take up, the first round of this. Again, likely this moves to the state Supreme Court as well. And that one's probably going to be something that goes into next year when the makeup of the court could be entirely different, with 5 seats of state Supreme Court justice positions on the ballot for the 2026 November election. So the whole makeup of the court is potentially going to be changed pretty dramatically, the court that would consider the challenge to the income tax. So that's it for today's April Fool's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. Always grateful for you watching. Means a lot to us. Check out our Center Square Washington page for more stories like this. And I hope we'll see you tomorrow.